Hi, everybody. Dave Hodges here, host of the Common Sense Show.tv. Still on the mend, doing better, but got a ways to go. Thank you for your well wishes. Always appreciate it. God bless each and every one of you. We live in very dire times, folks. We could be at nuclear war tomorrow, next week. I don't think we have a month unless these issues get resolved. And a lot of this ties into biblical prophecy. So I went back to the well with Doug Diamond. I said, we need to do a show on this. We need to actually get some of this out in the open. But just by way of backdrop, Ukraine is a pass-through, or historically was up until 2014, for Russian natural gas to go into Western Europe. And that served to negate a lot of the threat in Russia's mind of NATO coming after Russia militarily because Russia controls home heating oil. Well, the CIA interfered in all this. Pass-through in Ukraine in 2014 led to the invasion of Crimea, a workaround with Turkey that's too expensive for Russia to maintain. And of course, Syria became front and center in this whole controversy as well, too. So this is kind of where we're at. And I'll just state this, what I said all week long in print. Russia has nuclear submarines off our East Coast, and that's confirmed not by a few sources, folks, probably by as many as 40 or 50 sources, with people who do the same work I do, talking to different people. We're all getting the same conclusions. By the way, Biden shut out of the Pentagon. The military is having nothing to do with him. I'm not sure what this means going forward. I do not have any details. I just know he's been rejected from going to the Pentagon, and that's multiple sourced as well, too. So hope you're having a nice day in the neighborhood. But I think that before we all get incinerated and we go to meet our maker, I think that you have a right to know what's going on. So I've asked Doug to come on. We're going to give some perspective here from the Bible. And I think that's probably our best playbook at this point to understand what's going on, with certainly the lack of other information. So Doug, welcome to the show. I'm glad you could join us. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you having me back again. It's great. Well, the Bible talks about Damascus being destroyed in a day. I was wondering how you view that scripture, particularly in light of today's geopolitics.
Well, you and I spoke about a year ago, give or take, and I remember saying then I really felt like the Damascus prophecy would be happening before too long, because I really feel like Jesus will be returning in 2028, which is based on some projects that I've worked on. And September of 2028 is when I believe Jesus will return. So if you go back 7 years, that takes us to September of this year. So since I made my first video in 2019 about this whole timeline thing that I talk about, called Take It to the Lord in Prayer, End Times Dates series, I was saying that September of 2021 will most likely be some sort of peace plan. And what precedes a peace plan is usually some sort of war. So I feel like we are on the precipice of war right now. And I've been saying that for quite a while now, as has you and many other people at this point. But I really feel like it is playing out. I think that, the Damascus thing may or may not happen between now and then, but I do think there will be some nukes involved, unfortunately. And it is prophecy fulfilling, for sure.
Do you think we're the Great Babylon?
I think that the Babylon that Revelation refers to, it could be us. I personally believe it's probably Rome and the Catholic Church. But I think, it could be us as well. America, as it is, as we understand it, is not mentioned in the Bible, of course. But, it's really hard to say exactly what it is. I haven't spent a lot of time trying to figure out what's going to happen in America. I only have my instincts in listening to folks like you who are in the know, who are in touch with people who are making things happen. And it seems to me like we are definitely on the verge. Whether or not we have nuke strikes in the United States, I have no idea. It seems to me like that's unlikely, only from the standpoint of looking at it scripturally. This is the end times. I believe we are right smack in the middle of the end times. And if that's the case, I do think some things need to happen on a global scale where the Middle East is the center point of God's focus. And we can't all be wiped out, or none of us would be able to see things transpire exactly the way God laid them out in the book of Revelation. So I do think we will be here. I just don't know, what that looks like. He does talk about in the book of Revelation, it talks about a third of humanity being killed. And we talked to you and I before, Dave, about how that fits into the whole Deagle report. From between now and 2025, essentially a third of the world's population will be wiped out.
This might interest you to know, and it might only be temporary, but the Deagle report was unavailable as of an hour ago.
Maybe they're updating it. New numbers. It's hard to say. But I do think that, we will see a lot of tragedy. We will see a lot of people wiped out, but prophecy has been talking about that. The Bible has talked about that really since its inception. So I don't really think that there's any way to not fulfill prophecy. However, I do think, on the other hand, that we will be around, at least some of us, to be able to witness it unfolding. So I don't think it's going to be a global thermonuclear war where everyone is killed and wiped out, completely. So I do think there will be some sort of nuclear event, probably, in my opinion, in the Middle East. And I've been saying since really 2019 that I felt like probably it would be Damascus, and that this person, who we know as the Antichrist, would arise from the nuclear or World War III beginning, from the nuclear event in Damascus, because he's the son of perdition, the man of sin. And if you look at perdition, that means utter and total destruction. So I took that to mean that Syria would probably be that starting point. And then lo and behold, just a few weeks ago on March 27th, because I've been saying, things will really start kicking off in March of 2021. I've been saying that for a long time. I said that on your show multiple times. And March of 2027, we have this revealing of this person who I believe fits the description of who could become the biblical Antichrist. And it's somebody that I'd never heard of before. And I would say most likely most of the people that are in your audience have never heard of him either, and probably still don't. But the guy's nickname is the Eunucha, and he is a Jewish rabbi who's just really come out of nowhere. And it all started at Passover. It's sort of his triumphal entry, which I liken to Jesus's triumphal entry on Passover on March 27th. It really was revealed then. And I think that really fits with the timeline I've been talking about the whole time. So if he's the guy, and we can talk more in depth about him if you want, if he's the guy, and he does seem to want to bring peace to people from what I've read about him, maybe it's this guy's peace plan that happens in September this year to put an end to this war that we are building up to right now. So that's my thoughts on that anyway.
Well, I agree, and the war is building. I'm convinced now that I've watched Biden actions. His entire mission for his administration was to start World War III with Russia. And people have asked me, Dave, why do you think they want the war with Russia and the U.S. so much? Well, because they want a new world order. And they want it controlled by China, but China can't project military power globally in a very efficient manner. But if the U.S. and Russia are laying in ruins, then it's a moot point, because then China will have free reign to do whatever the globalists tell them to do. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but that's kind of my mindset on how I'm looking at this right now. And Putin feels that NATO's lining up against him, and he's being threatened economically as well as politically. We took Ukraine's sphere of influence away from Russia. We did so with CIA snipers on the roof and killed many, many Russian officials. And that doesn't go forgotten. The only thing I think that saved us from nuclear war up until this point was the fact that Putin held out hope that he and Trump could work around the Russian collusion delusion and forge an alliance. Unfortunately, that never came to be. Although I will tell you this may surprise you, Doug, but this information's been confirmed many times over. Putin and Trump met 2.5 weeks ago. And Putin made it really clear to him, you need to use whatever influence you have right now, because we will be attacking the United States with nuclear weapons if Biden interferes in Ukraine. And do I think this is true? I know it's true, because I also believe that that Netanyahu is also part of this. He's siding with Russia right now. So that leads me into my next point. Iran, the Iranian people, I like the Iranian people. I've met many people from Iran. They love the West. They love America. They like to be Christians, more of them. They're oppressed. They live under these crazy people called the Imams. And the Imams seem to be determined to have the end days prophecies act out in a horrific way so they can say their prophecies are being fulfilled. What do you think about the Imams and the influence they might be having right now with Iran leading to terrorist attacks against Israel?
Well, I mean, from what I understand about Islam, I think that what we would call extremists are actually just people who are living out their scriptures. They're not really extremists. They're just the people who are the closest to the Islamic scriptures. And so it's not really extremism from that standpoint. I do think that the Imams they are the ones that control all the other people that do the dirty work.
Yeah, that's true.
It seems to be they're the leaders. They're the ones that are steeped in all the different scriptures from Islam, from the Quran to the Sirah to the Hadith. I do think that they really have a lot to say. So beyond that, I do think that it's interesting, this Yanuka person I talked about before, who just came on the scene, I've heard people are saying he's half Islamic. I don't know about that, but I do know that his grandfathers are both from Islamic nations. One's from Syria and one is from Yemen. So I think there's a connection there. And if this guy is Islamic in any way, and I believe he has a photographic memory and probably has scriptures memorized, maybe this guy's their Mahdi. We don't know yet. So it does seem to be playing out exactly like you said. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, to me, you just look at it and you can't deny what you begin to see. And you see it over and over. The first person I ever heard talk about the Imams and their extremism was actually Glenn Beck. And he did so maybe a decade ago. And I listened to it and I go, that sounds odd. And I went and researched it and I found that Glenn was right on every single point. And he's right. They want to fulfill this crazy end times prophecy and they don't care how many billions die.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another great person that I've run into that we've had on Lost Arts Radio is a guy here in Nashville. His name is Dr. Bill Warner, and he is an expert in Islam. So if you are interested in interviewing him, I could hook you up with Dr. Bill.
Please do.
Incredible.
Yes.
He's
Absolutely.
really incredible. And I, most of what I know about Islam comes from his teaching. And he's really incredible as far as being able to explain it in a way that we all understand. For people who are Christians or even just non-Muslims, whether you're a Christian or not, you will really be able to understand it the way he teaches it. So I do feel like Dr. Bill Warner would be a good person to talk to maybe at some point.
So is it your position going forward now that beginning in September of this year, we will have 3.5 years of relative peace?
I think that that may be what plays out. Yeah, the first 3.5 years of the final 7 would be relative peace only from a country to country, like there's not going to be, so there will be an absence of war, but that doesn't mean there won't be a lot of bad things happening. I do think God's other judgments will be happening. I think Wormwood will probably happen in that first 3.5 year section before the final 3.5 years.
What will that look like?
Wormwood, well, some people think it's Apophis, this meteor or whatever that's headed our direction. Some people say it's Planet X. I sort of lean more towards Planet X because it's a cycle that happens every, several thousand years, elliptical cycle that comes back through our neighborhood, our galaxial neighborhood, So I tend to believe it's probably Planet X, but I don't know for sure. I think it could be a close bypass, getting into the trail of a small system that's passing through our neighborhood in our galaxy. And it's possible that, the way Wormwood is described in the Bible is talking about the water becoming bitter and things like that. So I do think that that first 3.5 years, even though it may be relative peace from the standpoint of no wars, I think there will be other things happening between now and the final 3.5 years, which is when the abomination of desolation will be set up. I do think the building of the third temple will be in this first 3.5 years. So sometime after September, probably.
What did you make of Trump's role in the rebuilding of the third temple?
I think he had a key role in having the, kind of the world headquarters of, moved from, I think it was in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The embassy moved there. And I think that was pretty key. And they really saw him as a great leader and a figure that was helping to bring about their prophetic world as well. So I think Trump played a pretty important role. And I think that once he was defeated by a fake election, I think that unfortunately, I believe personally that God made sure that he was notated as the last Trump. And Scripture talks about the last Trump. And I'd been saying that for quite a while, that I really felt like he was only going to have one term, not because he didn't win a second one, which I believe he completely won the second term. He was just cheated out of it by Biden and company. So I felt like he probably wouldn't be back in, but that doesn't mean he's going to go away either. I do think he's going to be around. And if he's meeting with Putin, obviously he still has a key role to play. Because to me, he's the legal president, even though he's not. You know what I mean?
Let me tell you how this may surprise you. This is straight out of geopolitics and not the Bible, but Putin and Netanyahu made the offer. Said, we will put troops on American soil if you can put us in contact with the right people to facilitate a partnership to remove Biden. And they were saying that world leaders want Biden gone. They see where Biden's taking the world, and they want nothing to do with it. And so now there's been a real buyer's remorse. Those that say, yay, Trump is gone, have now had a change of heart. And leading this charge are Netanyahu and Putin. And a lot of people are just saying, whoever would have thought of such an alliance? But I'm telling you, Doug, everything that I'm coming across says this is true. Now, the resistance is American military, they are rejecting Biden. He has no nuclear codes. He has no control over the nuclear facilities. He doesn't control the Space Force. And so he's kind of like out on an island. He's doing the globalist bidding. You've noticed they put up new fencing around D.C. He's expecting a coup. This is why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah. And he's doing a lot of things to try to protect himself. And the border, I think, is nothing but a big distraction from all that's going on here, because what we're talking about here is the real issue. And I think at the end of the day, I do think if there's a peace treaty, I think Putin and Netanyahu are going to be in the middle of it. And I think Trump is going to be helping to broker it. And I think we'll see the entire Biden administration go away. Whether they go to prison is one thing. Whether or not they're just allowed to walk away and stay out of politics is another. But the left is panicked. Doug, you look at how everything is racism and race riots and this and that and contra. It's all a distraction from what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah, and I would say, just to take it a little further, would be that perhaps they already have world government set up and ready to go, and that if this nuclear war, this nuclear exchange that happens, whatever's left, they will use that new crisis to bring us all into world government. So maybe Biden is irrelevant by then. Maybe it's the 10 new leaders, of which this person who's going to become the biblical Antichrist will be one of those 10. So maybe that's the plan. Maybe they're going to have world government established after this nuclear exchange, because that will get the world's attention. All the people who aren't paying any attention right now and are just worried about, can they go to the store and do they have to wear a mask? That's a whole different issue, really, if you have millions of people in different cities being killed. So I think that will certainly propel us into world government, because they'll couch it in a way that they'll make it sound like this is our only hope to survive. We have to go into world government. And therefore, these are the new 10 leaders, whoever they are.
You'll be hearing me scream at the top of my lungs to oppose this.
Yeah.
But in terms of what's coming, Steve Quayle likes to say, what's coming is no longer coming, it's already here. And Steve is absolutely right. One of the things I've also uncovered, and this is more geopolitical, but Chinese think they're just going to position northern and southern border, and when all heck breaks loose on the east coast of the United States and the U.S. is rendered a shell of itself in that part of the world, then the Chinese move into the West. Russia has already countered this. I covered this in 2014, and everything's been scrubbed, but I saved the hard copies. And this actually came out of the Russian Foreign Ministry. And they have definitive plans to occupy Alaska immediately. They feel they can accomplish this quicker than they conquered Crimea. And they're going to get the American forces to stand down. They believe that too. And they're going to encircle the Chinese so they cannot cross our border and take over. This is all these things are coming together. And when I first started writing about this and talking about this, I tell people like Steve Quayle, I'd say, Steve, I'm getting this from really good sources. And Steve says, Dave, I can't say a lot because of who's talking to me, but you are 100% correct. And then the flood of confirmation started to come in. We are truly at the end days here. So how does this play out? Let's go back to this rabbi. I think you're onto something here with this guy. Let's talk about his nature. We know where his parents are from. Let's talk about him and what we could reasonably expect to have happen.
Okay, well, his real name is Shlomo Yehuda Berry. And I had, just a few months probably before I even knew about this guy, I had been looking, I felt like I was being led to figure out, to try and understand, I should say, what 666 even means. And what I feel like God led me to is that 666 is a way of God identifying to us who the biblical Antichrist is, because the 666 is Gematria. Gematria is when you have a letter equals a number. So like A equals 1, B equals 2, and so on. Well, Hebrew Gematria, the way you get to that is you would take an English name and translate it to Greek, and then from Greek, translate it to Hebrew and calculate the number. So I did this with this Yanuka's real name. I always felt like it should be the full name. And so I took his full name because I was just interested myself. I wanted to see, okay, does this guy's name add up to 666? Well, guess what? It adds up to 618, 618. So I thought that's really interesting because I feel like God communicates to me through numbers in part. And when I see 18, I think 666 because it's 3 6s. So this guy's name equals 618, which is actually 4 6s because it's 6, and then the 18 is 3 more 6s. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then someone pointed out to me that maybe the first 6 is him as a human, like him as a man, and the second set of numbers, the 666, maybe that is him as Antichrist at the second half of the final 7 years. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And this guy has really taken the Torah world by storm, but he didn't just come out of nowhere. They've known about him since he was a little kid, a child prodigy. And growing up, he grew up in several other countries and felt like at the age of 6 or 7 or so that he told his father that he needed to grow up in the Holy Land, that he wanted to dedicate his life to the Torah. And so they ended up moving to the Holy Land, and he became known in the rabbinical community. They quickly started learning and realizing how much he knew as a kid, and he had the entire Torah dedicated to memory. So he could cite it chapter and verse, and not only that, when he's talking about certain characters in the Bible, in the Torah, he brings it to life to a point where you feel like you're connected to that person that he's talking about through him. So he really gives it like a new dimension. And like I said, he does everything just by memory. He doesn't use note cards or any sort of helping thing in front of him. He just does it all by memory, which is pretty incredible. So that tells me he probably has some sort of photographic memory, and he can memorize scripture and things like that really well. And not only that, now people are approaching him and trying to get to him, trying to touch him, because he's giving healing prayers to people and he's healing people. And then on top of that, the guy turns 33 in 5 more days. So 33 was the age that Jesus was upon crucifixion.
Yes.
And to me, he's made this triumphal entry already into Jerusalem back on Passover in March on the 27th. So you have all these, you have all these little things, these things that sort of add up to me to say, maybe this is the guy at least we should watch. And one of the things I read said that he is really dedicated to peace and that he wants to bring peace to people. So maybe if he's the guy, I feel like if the Jews are going to announce that he is their Mashiach or their Messiah, which of course we know it's the false Messiah, he's going to become the biblical Antichrist. But again, they're fulfilling their prophecy. If they announce him as the Messiah, they can't just do it any time. I feel like they have to do it at such a time when some sort of nuclear exchange happens, there's some sort of war, because at that point, people will be looking for answers. So I don't think they would announce him as the Messiah until that point. So again, going back to scripture, I feel like the nuclear part probably, unfortunately, has to happen first before this guy is named the Messiah. And I believe he is the guy, just based on some other confirmations that I've gotten in prayer. So, but he's not the Antichrist yet. Remember, he is a Jewish rabbi who is very meek and kind of hunched over and gimpy and sort of appears physically weak, but he's a brilliant scholar, and he has, like I said, he's taken the Torah world by storm, and people are really finding out about him. And I would point this out to you, Dave. When I found out about him, I went to his YouTube channel and subscribed to his channel, and I was literally the 666th subscriber on his YouTube channel. So I think God was trying to tell me something.
I think that was a strong message. I agree.
Yeah. Pretty well.
Does this mean that the U.S. is going to be on the back shelf because there's been a nuclear exchange, presumably where we're destroyed? I mean, how do you see that?
I guess I don't really see it that we will be completely destroyed. I feel like there may be some nukes that go off in the U.S. and if so, it may be military targets. Okay. I think Putin is a sensible enough guy. I don't think he knows that Biden was installed and we did not put him there, most of us. And I don't think personally, I don't think Putin's gonna want to kill millions of people. I could be wrong on that, and I hope that I'm not.
He's ex-KGB though, Doug. I mean, this guy, it's not like he comes from a strong moral background.
No, I know he doesn't. But so, and that could be the case. Maybe you're right. Maybe he does wipe out.
He scares me. He scares me because of this.
Yeah, and I guess we'll just have to see, because I don't have any answers. I'm just going off of what I feel like.
Me too. But I wrote an article back in 2014 at the Crimea crisis, and I said, before all of you hail Putin as a hero, here's his background, and it does not add up. And God can reach anybody, and He can transform anybody He chooses, and maybe that's happened. And he's tried to put on the pretense of going into the church, going through the motions. I realize all that.
Yeah.
But let's just put it this way. God hasn't done anything to remove my healthy skepticism.
Understood. And I think Erdogan is another one to watch. I mean,
yes.
I think he's another one that's just as bad or worse. So,
well, he double-crossed Putin, because when Putin lost Ukraine pass-through for a lot of the natural gas, he went through Turkey to do this, and Erdogan stabbed him in the back.
Yeah, continues to.
Turkey's still lucky they're around. I'm serious. This was really egregious.
I know it's bad. So I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see what happens. I do think that most of us will probably be around to at least witness the end days, and I do think we're at the beginning of the final 7 years, starting in September. Yeah. And the Bible talks about a third of humanity being killed, and I don't think that's by a virus. I do think that's probably some sort of war or some sort of military conquest of some sort, just based on what I've studied. So, it's really hard to say. Obviously, we're going to lose a lot of people. Scripture is very clear about that. But I don't think we lose the whole world. I don't think we're at that point. I don't think God will allow that to happen. So maybe if Putin's really the bad guy here, and he's totally fine in destroying entire American cities, maybe God makes the missiles not work. I don't know.
Yeah, one thing I do know is that Putin has privately told members of NATO, if this goes to a shooting war, I will destroy one major city in each one of your countries. That part I know is true. So then again, I come back to does a Christian really talk that way? We're not talking national self-defense now. We're talking retribution. That's not Christian. Yeah, that's not godlike. And that's why I have this healthy skepticism of Putin. I just saw a movie. my wife reminded me, wanted to see it, pandemic hit and so forth. It was called The Courier. And I've talked about it some on my podcast. If you want to know what it's like to live inside a Soviet-style regime, that's your movie. It's a fascinating movie. It's so well done. It's historically so accurate. But everyone either worked for the KGB or reported to the KGB. And no one was safe. Everyone was paranoid. It was a horrible, horrible existence. And what I'm saying to America is we may not be able to live out very long under this regime, but this is exactly what we're moving under right now. We are under a Bolshevik revolution style of tyranny in this country.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's where they wanted to take us for a long time. Trump delayed that for a little while.
Yes.
But now we've got Biden and company in there, and they're all for it. So that does seem to be the way it's all playing out, unfortunately. But I do think that, God's not surprised by any of this. We just have to stay close to him and bring Jesus into our hearts. Ask Jesus to come live in our hearts and the Holy Spirit, and let the Holy Spirit guide us. Because I really feel like that's all we can really do. I mean, that's, as just an average person out there, that's all we can really do is pray and know that we're doing the best we can in our worlds, in our families and stuff.
I've been asked by some people, how do I use the information that I get access to? The answer is, it's not really a whole lot I can do with it other than to direct me to do the right thing spiritually.
Yeah.
It just reconfirms what I need to be doing. And I think God knows who he's dealing with me. I'm a data person, a stat person, and I like to follow the numbers and the logic. And I think God deals with me on that fashion a lot. I think he really appeals to my logical side. He appeals to my emotional side too, but it's my logical side. And that's really getting my attention here. I wanted to do a couple things before we close. First of all, tell us the name of this potential Antichrist rabbi again.
Okay. His name, well, he goes by mostly he's known as the Eunucha, and that is a Zohar reference to a soul who from childhood is who has exceptional Torah knowledge. So that's what Eunucha means, but his real name is, he's a rabbi, so Rav, R-A-V, Shlomo Yehuda Berry, and it's B-E''ERI. So if you put that into the Gematria calculators, you come up with 618, which is, to me, 4 6s. So I think he's the guy. I think things, we'll see how it plays out. But, even as a child prodigy, as a kid, he was telling people who were realizing him, that were decades older than him. As a kid, he was saying, please don't let people know about me. My time has not come yet. So that tells me he knew as a kid who he was going to be, that he's going to grow up to be this Moshiach, which is their Messiah. Which, the Jews are blind. They don't see the real Messiah as Jesus Christ. Obviously, they killed him. But they will, I think, make this person their Messiah at some point, probably after the war has started, so that he can be the person to bring the peace plan.
And ultimately the great deception. Yeah.
And I don't think, like I said, I don't think he's going to be the Antichrist straight away. I think he will become that. Even if it's not this person, the person who does the peace treaty is probably going to be a good person. It probably will be somebody who the world is looking up to, and that he's going to evolve into that Antichrist character. And remember, when Satan is thrown out of heaven permanently and can no longer come and go anymore, that's at the abomination of desolation. At that point, his spirit comes down and inhabits or indwells the person who will become the Antichrist. So the person you see now, if this rabbi is the guy, he's not been fully indwelt by any sort of satanic spirit. Now, he's steeped in Kabbalism, he's steeped in the Zohar and the Talmud and all these things that as Christians we abhor. However, that doesn't mean that he's evil, like satanically evil yet. I think that at that point, at the halfway mark, is when that happens. So you can't really look at him now and say, oh, well, he's sort of gimpy and hunched over and he wears glasses, so he can't be the Antichrist. Well, guess what? He's not the Antichrist yet, but he may become that.
It's, it's
That's
a
what I
scary,
think.
scary thought. Tell people how they can follow your good work on Lost Arts.
Well, Lost Arts Radio is actually a friend and client of mine. That's not really my show. I produce it. My stuff is primarily on takeittotheLordinprayer.com.
Yes.
That is, it's a YouTube channel. I lost my original YouTube channel. I think I told you, 28,000 subscribers. They wiped it out completely. YouTube did, for medical misinformation. But that was more geared towards some of the interviews and stuff I had on there, not my End Times Date series. So I made a new channel that's only the End Times Date series. That is where you go when you go to takeittotheLordinprayer.com.
Okay.
So that's primarily it.
Okay. But you're still producing Lost Arts too.
Still producing Lost Arts and helping Dane Wigington and Anthony Patch and a bunch of other people. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, any of those people you want to send my way, I'll be happy to have them on the show here.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah, Anthony's not really doing interviews anymore, unfortunately. But
I've heard.
And Dane is super busy, as you know. He's always super busy. I think Dr. Bill Warner might be a great person for you to talk to, so I'll put you in touch with him.
Well, now's the time. I mean,
yeah,
it's not like these problems are going to go away. Although I can't believe the amount of people. I actually sometimes have these spiritual discussions with people, and at the end of the day, I think that they just walk away thinking, "Yeah, okay, I understand, but it's not going to happen." And
yeah,
I'm sure you see this a lot too.
Yeah, and I was there. Until God dropped in my lap a few years ago this project called 2028 End, and that's when I looked at that and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is real. I mean, I knew the Book of Revelation was real. I never questioned that. It's just like, okay, now this puts a finality to this is happening right now, and I got to figure this out. And that's when I really felt like God started pointing me in the right directions. I mean, I don't hear God audibly, but he communicates with me through numbers and in different ways, and especially in prayer. And I feel like if we are in tune to that, we can if we ask questions, we will get answers. And things don't ever play out exactly the way we think it does, but it's pretty amazing what I feel like he's shown me. I mean, like March, I was talking about March of 2021, a year and a half ago. And then this guy is revealed in March. And not only that, but the kickoff to World War III with Zelensky signing the thing that he signed in Ukraine. That all started on March 24th, too. So I was not right that Syria, that Damascus would get nuked in March and that the Antichrist would come from that. But guess what? The March date was correct. The Antichrist, who I believe will be this rabbi, was revealed in March. And not only that, even though the nuke thing didn't happen, I think World War III probably really did kick off. If this is going to be it, that really did start in March with Ukraine and Russia. So it's pretty strange how things are playing out, for sure.
Well, yeah, and they're playing out to a T. I mean, it's to me, it's undeniable, and everything else is just distraction, people. Although stay off the streets because the riots are still coming, regardless of the convictions. I talk to people in federal law enforcement; they're prepping for riots right now. Secretly. They're pretending it's an earthquake drill, but they're prepping for the riots. Look, you've been a great guest. I always appreciate having you on, and look forward to following up with you because of the way things are going. They're so volatile right now. I might be calling you tomorrow. Who knows? Well,
that'd be great. Yeah, I mean, I feel like right now the thing we can really watch for is probably September.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right on the money. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've been blessed to have such a great guest. Thank you so much for joining us, Doug. It's been awesome. And
thank you, Dave.
Talking to you again. Take care.
Yep. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.